Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the Ambassadors channel. I'm Tyrone Bannarbie, and you are watching the Ambassadors channel. I'm very excited that you are able to tune in and join us on today. Thank you for joining in. So today we're talking about Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, verse 27. Then we're going to move over to chapter 2, verse 7. Right. So in this conversation today, we are talking about identity. Do you know who you are? And if you do, are you acting accordingly to who you say you are or who you think you are? So let's jump right into the scriptures. Again, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27, and then chapter 2, verse 7. Because sometimes we think we know who we are simply based upon our culture, our upbringing. We have a tendency to allow culture to identify us, people to identify us, and our experiences to identify us. Notice I say that we allow those things to identify us. And part of the reason that we do that is basically because we don't fully understand who we are. People don't identify you. Your experiences don't identify you. They may tell you something about you, but it does not identify the core of who you are. And so today it's my endeavor, excuse me, to do exactly that, to share with you who we are, not just you, but who we are, the core of who we are. So Genesis chapter 1, verse 6. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Chapter 2, verse 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Now, I'm not sure whether or not you caught that, but in verse 26, it says that God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. He said, let us make man. And then when you go to verse 27, it said that so God created man in his image and in his likeness. So my question to you is, what exactly did God do? Did he create or did he make? It can be confusing to some people, I'm assuming. It was for me when the first time I read this. I was like, well, God, did you make or did you create? Which one was it? He did both. That's right. He did exactly both. So what God did was just remember that he had already created everything. He created he already created the heavens and the earth and the dust of the ground. And basically what he did was he took from what he had already created and made the body of man. He had already created the dust of the ground, and so he took from that and formed a body. So in chapter 1, verse 26 and verse 27 doesn't go into detail and telling us what exactly God did. But when you read chapter 2, verse 7, it explains to us exactly what God did. He did both. He made and he created. So now we know that God has made your body. And I'm drawing distinction between what God made and what God created because it's very, very important I should say in us knowing who we are. That you're not your body. That is the superficial part of you. What's important is what was imparted into that body and make that body what it is. And so in chapter 2, verse 7, we found out that God created a soul. He created a soul. He made the body, but create a living soul. That means that you are a living soul, a spirit, a spiritual being, a living soul with a body. Also, what that means for you and I is that since the eternal God imparted part of himself into a body, something that he formed, that he made and brought it to life, it simply means that you are eternal. You and I are eternal beings. We are eternal beings. Every single man, woman, and child living in this universe is eternal. Yep, that's right. We will live on forever. Now, that determines where we go. Our decisions will determine where we're going to live on forever. But what I want you to get out of this is that, hey, that you are a spiritual being that has a body. You're not a body that has a spirit and a soul. You are a soul that has a body. Your body belongs to you. You are a living soul, an eternal being. Now, with that said, also, what does that mean? Now that you know that you live eternally, and your decision will determine where you will spend eternity, it also means that before you were even created, before you had a body, your purpose and your identity had already been established. That's exactly right. Your purpose and your identity preceded your existence into this physical world. So no matter what tries to identify you, no matter what tries to tell you who you are, as long as you know that you had identity, you had an imprint upon you, you were created in power, you were created in dominion, not to be dominated by things, but you dominate things, right? Your emotion don't dominate you. Your feelings don't dominate you. Your thoughts don't dominate you, because you are not your thought, you are not your feeling, and you are not your emotion. Those things are just reaction to outside stimulus. What you got to understand, you and I have to understand, is that we are a spiritual being. We are a living soul made in the image and likeness of God, in dominion and power. You have the power, you have the authority, you have the dominion. So don't allow things to identify you. Don't allow things and your experience to tell you or to dictate who you are, what you can do, or what you cannot do. Take control, walk in the integrity of who you are, and know that you are a living being, an eternal being created by God. That is the core of who you are.